Hey everybody, George here with another episode of the In Good Spirits podcast with my friend here, Chris.
George, thank you so much for coming over again to the Food About Town studio. We're recording live here in person, and I'm really excited. We've got another great couple whiskeys to try tonight, but I'm also excited that it's curling season coming up. I'm ready to get back on the ice. We're tasting some malted products today. Feels kind of reminiscent, even though we don't have any scotch here, but we're tasting malted products.
We are single malt whiskeys.
It's a bit of a stretch, but I'm going to take it.
It's close. I mean, so actually, to tie in, these both have a Scottish heritage in a way.
Oh, do they really?
So these are Single Farm Single Malts from two different places. One being from Ireland, one being from here in the Finger Lakes region. So we'll start with the Waterford, the one from Ireland. The founder of the distillery came over from the Brooklady distillery.
Okay. So let's talk about first. We talk about the bottles sometimes. This is a beautiful, elegant bottle. This has one of the glass corks. It's really nice looking.
Very expensive piece of glass.
Yes, it feels very high end.
I feel like I need white gloves for holding this thing. You know?
Yeah, it does.
All these fingerprints now. Oh,
it kind of feels like that. But this is single malt Irish whiskey.
Correct.
And that's kind of different than a lot of the Irish products, the vast majority, which are blended Irish whiskeys.
Correct. Blended, or what would be called a single grain, where they use not actually only one single grain, much like single malt. The single denotes the number of distilleries that are a source for it, but it would be a blend of multiple grains or truly one only grain through a grain still, not a pot still.
Okay. And you also said this was single farm.
Correct. Both of these are actually single farm. This Waterford comes from the Rathclough farm in Ireland. And actually, I'm going to say right now, there's more information available about this whiskey than pretty much any product of any kind I've ever seen.
Oh, that's awesome.
But we're not even going to start digging into that because we could sit here and talk for 30 minutes about all the information they provide. If you go to their website and put in your batch code from your box, like they have the time and date of when the seeds for the barley were planted, when it was cut, when it was processed, when the truck drove the barley from the farm to the malt house, when the malt house malted it, like the exact proportion of the blend of barrels being from which barrel and how many liters. And it's just unbelievable the amount of transparency on this product there is.
Well, that's super exciting too, because I think that's one thing that I think we can say about the vast majority of distilleries is, even though you'll get some information about the process, a lot of it is storytelling. When you've got that kind of delineated logistical information, but also understanding what exact grain was planted, where did it live? Not to sound overly, not that we're always going to sound a bit pretentious, but the, that real terroir of, this was grown at a farm, and that was directly taken to a place. And from the nose, we're just double checking. This is the lighter of the two before I go off and say anything, right?
Yes, you are drinking the Waterford right now.
Okay. This smells so much like freshly harvested grain. This smells like a farm in a great way, with that caramel coating all over it.
That it does, and that was very much their intention with this distillery. It's all about terroir. It's all about a sense of place. It's all about celebrating the barley.
Yeah.
And including, excuse me, how they went about everything is to showcase the source grain itself.
And it's very much this. It's got some of those high apple-y notes, but this smells, you can smell the grain. You can smell that that's a farmed product, which is super exciting, especially when you know it was done on purpose.
Yes. The only thing I smell on the nose that it has some of the hallmarks of a younger barley spirit.
Yes.
Very like the best way I can describe that is peach ring candies.
Mm-hmm.
It smells kind of like those. It's
Yep.
not necessarily a flaw. I'm not
No.
saying it's off-putting. It's still very pleasant, but that's very much in letting the grain shine through so much. You're not seeing an evolution of those flavors yet.
Yeah, it reminds me of some of those, porridgey with fruit kind of things, the peaches and cream oatmeal kind of thing.
Yes, that's
'Cause
exactly it. Yes,
It's
yes,
got some
yes.
porridginess. You can smell that cooked, the cooked grain. So it still has some of that roundedness, but that caramely, the caramely and that, brown sugar sweetness almost, without it being like light brown sugar, certainly not dark. It's not molassesy, but it's got the demerara sugar, porridgey thing going on. Really nice on the nose. Very pleasant.
It is, and a lot of those same flavors
Wow.
come through on the palate, but the palate is a little more, it grabs hold of you a little more.
It's got a real intense mid body. It's big. It's all those notes that we talked about with a little more roundedness. It's not quite as, it doesn't have any fake peachy. It's like everything's cooked. Everything's deeper. Everything's rounded. This has got a real big, when you crank up, you go to your car stereo and you turn up the mids all the way, like the mids and then a lot of the bass. It's like really cranked up. It's so rich in the middle. I was expecting it to be more delicate. This is not delicate on the palate. It's big. Not to say it doesn't have balance, but it's really rich.
It is, and it's got like a little bit of an oiliness to it. Again, it kind of has like, again, that peach ring thing
Yeah.
on the palate too, and it kind of permeates into your mouth. Like it takes hold and sits there, kind of like how the oils of a pepper kind of like soak in and sit.
Oh, that's interesting because this is, I know exactly what you're saying, especially some of those like red pepper fruitiness.
Yeah.
Like it almost has some of that because it again, this is something that has, this knows exactly what it is. And we talk about this a lot recently, especially, but generally, and I think the things you and I tend to gravitate to are products that have a real identity, right?
And this very much has an identity.
It knows exactly what it is. It's got the transparency. It's got the sourcing. It's got all that stuff. But at the same time, this is also a really approachable, but man, even just little sips, you're luxuriating with how much this has going on the palate.
Very much so, yeah. And it's very, again, it clearly has a sense of place. It does smell, but it also tastes very agricultural.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that kind of gets lost in a lot of the products out there, that this is from the earth, made by people, it's grown by people wearing jeans and wearing steel-toe boots and a dirty t-shirt,
Yeah.
We're not, despite the luxurious packaging, like it
doesn't taste like that. It doesn't taste like that. You can still taste some dustiness.
Yeah.
But not, we've tasted a lot of incomplete, dusty grain whiskeys over the years when we've sampled together. This is not that at all. But there's grain in here.
It's grit.
Yeah, it has some of that. It has some gumption. It's got everything about this. When you sit with this, I think this is the kind of thing you almost want to have an environment around you sampling this. I could see sitting out on a fire with this. I could see a fireplace inside with this. And I could see just sitting down and trying to, have a great discussion with somebody over this, because every time you sip it, you might get that little distraction from the conversation that refreshes your mind. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I think that's really delightful. I'm enjoying that a lot.
It is interesting, though, how the disconnect between the packaging and the product, though. It's so pretentious and polished and very, we'll say, luxury, but it tastes so gritty, raw, and down to earth, quite literally.
I was expecting it to be much more delicate based on how it was packaged.
I mean, even look at the box. It's got the rainbow foil all over.
Yeah. It feels like it was going. I thought it was going to be super delicate and polished, and this is much more a. This is something that knows what it is, and it's going hard after that thing, and I'm really enjoying it. I think this is a great product. I think the packaging is a little bit different than what I was expecting, and it's weird that we're talking so much about the packaging on this, but I think it's because it's a little bit of a diametrically opposed, like this. It's just so different from what I thought it was going to be.
It really, really is.
Yeah.
So, price point on it, $75 to $80.
That's about what I was thinking. I think that's completely fair.
I have conflicting feelings about it. On one hand, with the amount of care given to it and the level of just information about the whiskey and how, terroir driven and agriculture driven it is, I understand the price.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I feel like the whiskey doesn't quite, again, it's very like rugged, gritty.
Yes.
It's like farm fresh, from, leave your money in a can, get your ears of corn kind of whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's obviously not made from corn, but the feeling of that is still there. And, 50 cents an ear doesn't come out to $80 a bottle in a way.
No, that's fair. I think, this is the kind of thing where, when you're paying for locally sourced meats, where the farm it's coming from, how it was treated, all that stuff. For me, that does add value. I think what differentiates this from some of the other Irish whiskeys I've tried is it really packs a punch where a lot of them don't. A lot of them it's much more nice and not delicate, but it's just kind of one note. It's got that biscuity thing and all that other stuff. It's nice. This has some real impact, and that's why for me it grabs me in a way that I was a little surprised with. One of my favorite Irish whiskeys that we've tried. I think I just like that it has some like real get up and go to it.
It really does. I will give it that.
Yeah.
I just feel like at the price point, it's a little outperformed by some others out there. But
that's fair.
It is what it is, right?
Yeah. Well, we've got another malted product, so let's dive into that. But this one is from the Finger Lakes in New York State.
It is indeed. And sorry, I was trying to get information about the spirit.
Okay.
When we get to.
So this one's from Hollerhorn Distilling. We've done some stuff before. We did their maple distillate, which was, one younger, one a little bit older maple distillate. The sapling and seedling, I believe, were the two products. Those
Correct.
Were delightful. This is, they have a wide range, but this is a malt-based whiskey that they released just this year, right? 2021.
This is the most current release of their single malt, yes. And I was trying to find the price for it because I don't honestly remember. And it's not on their online store, so I don't know. But this is also single farm. But to go back to that Scottish connection for you, the owner and distiller apprenticed at Springbank Distillery in Campbelltown.
Which is one of the highest profile high-end distilleries.
Probably in my opinion, one of the best and most storied distilleries in Scotland, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about this, again, we're talking, Finger Lakes barley. Is it malted in New York State as well, or is it malted somewhere else?
To be a single malt, it has to be malted. Oh, I'm sorry. I totally misinterpreted your question. Yes, it's everything is local. So This is actually also single farm.
Awesome.
I've got the name of the single farm right here from the message.
Very cool.
So we've got the name of both farms we're drinking from. It is from A Bunch of Acres.
Okay. That's a great name.
It is.
I love that.
It really is.
None of those
And
numbers.
it's a organically grown Endeavor barley is
Oh.
the varietal of barley.
Well, it's very cool. I'm glad we got that information. And it's nice to hear that, we know where it's coming from. We know what it's trying to do. But let's see what the expression is. So this is, it smells a little bit younger as well. It's got a little bit of sharpness to it.
It is on the younger side. However, I'm not getting the younger notes you would normally get in a single malt, though.
A lot of the other nose is definitely there. The roundedness. I'm excited to taste it because I'm getting some of the carameliness. I'm getting a little bit more of the fresh grain on the nose than I did on the Waterford, but I'm really enjoying it at the same time. It's a little bit different kind of grain expression on my nose.
It is, especially since this is both peated and smoked.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That
So
makes sense.
It's got kind of like a savory, sweet, like briskety thing to me.
Yeah, I think I was misinterpreting that as some dustiness, but now that you mention Pete, I'm driving some of those things out of my nose now. That makes complete sense.
Yes, and let me bounce back. I've got too many damn things open on my phone. So it's peated and smoked, and it's a single barrel that was transferred through. So it's single farm, single barrel, single malt.
Wow.
And that single barrel was transferred through 4 different types of barrel. It started out in ex-bourbon, then went on to a French oak barrel, and then spent some time in a port wine cask, and then finally in casks that previously held their Calvados-inspired apple brandy.
Holy cow. And you know what? Now that you've gone through that litany of process that this went through, yeah, it's sometimes it's the power of suggestion that brings you to those things, but sometimes it helps you focus your nose and your palate on looking for some of those things. It's not suggestion, but sometimes
it offers clarity sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you need that angle to look at it, but now that you've mentioned some of those things, I'm actually finding it pretty easy to delineate. Like, I can smell that Calvados style apple brandy, but everything is very subtle. This is not intensely peaty. It's not intensely smoky. It's not intensely appley, but I can smell it now that you mentioned
it's nuanced. It has a level of finesse, and
absolutely.
I wouldn't call it delicate because it's definitely not. It's very well structured. But it's definitely...
Whoa, wow.
Yeah, right?
Wow. Okay, so nose-wise, I was trying to pick all those things out. Palate-wise, this is so big.
It is, and it's got like a coppery minerality to it.
For sure, and considering it's lower proof...
Yeah,
wow,
proof on it is 88, so 44% alcohol.
Considering how it doesn't have a harsh alcohol at all, it's got some real density.
It does. It absolutely
flavor.
Does.
The smoke and the peat comes out more on this, but not in a, Iowa Scotch way. It's not that. This plays almost like a really well played out Highland Scotch, you know what I mean? Where maybe it has a little bit of peat, but not a ton. And it was maybe finished in something.
I actually kind of feel like I chased the Springbank influence on this, and I kind of actually...
I actually haven't had any Campbelltown stuff, so I'm...
Oh.
I was reaching a little bit because...
Oh, I got to get you some.
You know what? The reason I was saying that, because it reminds me of, some of the Highlands that have that real... polish to them.
So kind of like Orkney stuff, like Highland Park.
Yeah,
Where
exactly.
there is peat, but it's not as intense. Yeah.
That's what I was grabbing at.
Okay,
but
I can
because
see
I
that,
haven't,
for sure.
You mentioned Campbelltown, but I haven't had any Campbelltown stuff.
We're gonna have to right that wrong there because
I'm very excited.
Springbank is incredible.
Yeah.
So this reminds me of a cross between Springbank's 10-year-old and that the Lefroy Cardias we had a few weeks ago, because it's got that a little bit of salinity and some savoriness, but also that little bit of delicate fruit.
Wow.
And that coppery minerality that you would get from something like Springbank.
No, it really does have that metallic. The palate is so round, but it's not too much of anything. Like, when we were talking about that Cardeas, that was huge. This isn't huge, but it's big all around.
It really is.
Wow. I'm surprised isn't the right word, but when I was smelling it, I was not expecting it to be this. I was not expecting it to be this polished and rounded and crafted. Not to say, I've had other stuff from them that I really enjoyed, but to taste how well crafted everything about this is, especially with the density that it is at 88 proof, is wild how big it is at that low proof.
And would you believe that it is actually younger than the Waterford?
Wow. You know what? I am really shocked at how complete this is, for how I can taste that it's young, but not in a sharp way.
Yeah, it doesn't have the, like I was talking about, the peach ring candy.
Yeah.
None of that there.
No, not at all.
And this is only 2.5 years old. I don't remember the exact age of the Waterford, but it's a little more. It's not very old, but I think it's closer to 4 or so. I don't remember. It's not on the box. I'd have to pull up their infinitely long scroll of information. But
I gotta say, this is a testament to somebody that obviously really cares about making something specific and special, because for something at 2.5 years to be this rounded, to be this, again, we used the word complete in some of the recent episodes. This feels like a complete picture of something where it's not missing. I don't think it's missing anything. I personally might want some more proof, but it doesn't need it.
Go back to the Waterford real quick.
Gotcha. Yeah. In comparison, the Hollerhorn is so much more.
Isn't it?
It's so much more complete that it feels young now. The Waterford feels younger.
Isn't it?
Having tasted it.
I've never had these two side by side. I haven't actually touched my bottle of Waterford in months at this point.
Wow.
So actually having them side by side and going back, it's almost unfair to have them together. It's
almost night and day. Now it's tasting the Waterford on its own. I really enjoyed it.
It's delicious.
It's really good.
Again, it's incredible whiskey.
And again, really good, well-sourced, transparent, all those things. It's kind of a different ball game.
It is, because I think this is very intentionally grain-driven.
Yeah.
This is a culmination of this is a painting using a palette of a bunch of different colored paints. This is ink on paper. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this feels like there was some license. Everything about this, it's not just an expression of a place at a time with all those different finishes. With the addition of all the sourcing and single grain, but this doesn't taste like that.
No.
This tastes like a combination of a big process.
And I know there's power of suggestion there in knowing the distiller at Hollerhorn, Carl, apprentice at Springbank, but you absolutely taste. You'll have to try Springbank, and we'll make that happen. But I absolutely taste the influence of his tutelage there, and learning a lot of his, learning not everything he knows about distillation, but a good chunk of it.
Wow.
And I think it's just really cool. This is very much the expression of a place and a person, whereas this is more the place.
I think that's a great way to round out what we talked about today, because this is, not to put too fine a point on it, but this is certainly one of the finest whiskeys I've tasted out of upstate New York.
I'd include downstate too, actually.
Yeah, this is pretty phenomenal stuff. So, one, cheers to Carl from Hollerhorn. This is amazing. I can't wait to taste more of this kind of stuff. Yeah, all day, every day. This is really delicious.
Yeah. And distillery only, so head down there and grab some dinner at the restaurant too.
Absolutely. So, George, where can people find you?
Again, deep in this bottle of whiskey, but also at Whiskey Jedi on Instagram with the E.
And at Stromy on Twitter and Instagram, Food About Town, and the Food About Town podcast on foodabouttown.com. Curate meals if you need a meal on a Wednesday night in Rochester. Reach out to me and let me know if you have any questions. But otherwise, this has been another great episode of In Good Spirits. This is awesome all around. Malt all day, George. And cheers.
Cheers.